Today's video I'm back with another interview. I'm here with Nikki Hru. Nikki, how are we doing?
Well, I'm doing all right. How are you doing?
I'm doing very well, thank you. It is a pleasure to have you on the channel and I really appreciate you coming on.
Oh, of course. Thank you for having me.
Lovely stuff. So, am I right in saying you're a featherweight boxer who's 2-0 and fights for the Influencer Fighting League? Is that what it is? I believe that's what it stands for.
Yes, so my last two fights have been with IFL,
Mhm.
Influencer Fight League. I am their featherweight champion, and I am ICB's super bantamweight champion.
Amazing. Well, brilliant stuff. So, just to start off with the question, which I always like to start off with, why did you start boxing?
So I started combat sports in general when I was a little kid.
Mm-hmm.
It's just kind of in my blood. My
Mm-hmm.
family does it. My dad trained me.
Mm-hmm.
I was also just a very like feisty kid, so I've
Mm-hmm.
gotten a lot of fights. And then specifically boxing, an opportunity came up for my first fight. They were
Mm-hmm.
looking for female influencers for an all female card, which I'm so here for.
Yeah.
My entire platform is very much about uplifting women.
Mm-hmm.
So that was just so sick.
Mm-hmm.
And then I fell in love with sport.
Amazing, that's brilliant. And I suppose going back to the fact that you said your kind of family was helping you start getting into the sport, a lot of people and a lot of families in general aren't too keen on their kind of children and stuff getting into sports. But how nice was it to have that support from your family?
Oh, I mean, it was lovely. It's funnily enough, when I was little, I talked about being in more so MMA fighting, but I
Mm-hmm.
talked about getting into the ring and fighting. And my parents were like, don't do it professionally.
Mm-hmm.
Like, we're fine with you doing it,
Mm-hmm.
but we don't want you to like break your brain.
Mm-hmm.
That was always the concern.
Yeah. Yeah.
So this is a little bit of a pivot into an uncomfortable area for them.
Mm-hmm.
But knowing that my entire family has enough skill set to not only watch my fights, but understand them and enjoy them, and then give me notes.
Mm. Yeah.
It's that is a really cool feeling.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I can only imagine so. And I mean, I know your kind of content is based a lot of around like kind of good mental and positive vibes and to good health things. And I suppose what would you say are the good kind of mental health things that boxing brings?
Oh my goodness. Uh, Discipline is a really big one.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's something that a lot of people lack. And I think we can find this in different facets of fitness in general.
Mm-hmm.
But there is a certain level of discipline in combat sports that just rewires your brain
Mm-hmm.
into just doing it. No matter how much it sucks, no matter how much your day is off or you're just not feeling it,
Yeah.
there's something. And I found this in dance too, actually,
Mm-hmm.
surprisingly enough.
Mm-hmm.
But you just get into this mindset of I can do anything. I just have to put in the work to do it, and then
Mm-hmm.
gives you this willingness to do the work.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's so cool. Also, it's great anger management, but that's
Mm-hmm.
a whole other.
Yeah. Yeah. Of course. And so I mean, you've got the influencer fighting scene, and of course you've got your big platform yourself, and I suppose for a lot of fighters in general, you see them kind of struggle to get quite big fights because they don't have as big of a following and stuff like that. And
Yeah.
how important is it to kind of have yourself as a brand as well?
So it is a little bit different being in influencer fighting
Mm-hmm.
versus
Mm-hmm.
like the pros.
Yeah, of course.
Where we are in like slightly different worlds. Even amateurs, like it is a little bit different. So I can't really speak on the importance on that side of the aisle.
Mm-hmm.
But I know for me within the influencer boxing world, like I am a like micro influencer. I am
Mm-hmm.
significantly smaller than some of the other people we're seeing,
Okay.
which can be a little bit difficult because there are people that I have my eye on.
Mm-hmm.
Like the only other female champion, Astrid Wet. I'm
Mm-hmm.
just staring at her and I'm like, let
Yeah.
me beat you.
Yeah. Yeah.
But star power seems to play a really big role in all of this,
Mm-hmm.
which is it is very interesting to navigate
Mm-hmm.
because I think that you have to balance this whole idea of building a brand versus seeking notoriety.
Mm-hmm.
Because I think when you seek notoriety, it kind of messes with you as like a person.
Yeah.
But it is important, and it is important to be this marketable image.
Mm-hmm.
because that's the first thing everyone sees of you,
Yeah.
right? I hope that kind of answers your question.
No,
I know
of
it's a
course.
little.
No, 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 of course. And I mean, I did kind of want to ask you about some other kind of big promotions that are doing influencer fighting as well. But I mean, you've kind of brought up Astrid Wet there, and just wanted to get your thoughts on the whole thing that went down with her and Alexia Grace before their fight not ended up happening. I don't know if you saw it.
Of course, I saw it. Um, I I am very happy that Astrid is okay.
Mm-hmm.
I I obviously don't know how real everything is,
Yeah.
right? Because everything we all want to hype up fights. We're also all dramatic. We're all doing this, we're all doing that because like of the world that we're in.
Yeah.
So I don't know if they planned throwing her into a table like WWE style. No idea. Obviously. I don't know. Astrid and I aren't homies like that. But I think it really highlights, no matter what, the importance of making these events as safe as possible. Because it is such a shame that that fight didn't get to happen. I mean, she did. I do think it's incredible that she went out to try and start her own promotion. I think that having women, or even just fighters in general, but having a woman stand up to a big company and be like, no, you're not going to mistreat me.
Yeah.
That is so incredible to me. And I have so much admiration that she was trying to do that. I don't know, like, if Alexi's just crazy and threw her through a table, or if it was a stunt gone wrong, or if they wanted to end the fight. Like, whatever it is, though, I just think highlights being safe and making sure that you can trust the people around you to keep you protected as much as we can be protected in a sport like boxing.
Yeah, totally. And I mean, just to kind of speak about some of your fights and some of the kind of build-ups you've had with some of your opponents ahead of fights. I mean, it's not always been the best of back and forth between some of your opponents, but do you feel like that is something that does get you up for a fight a bit more?
I'm so sorry, you cut out. Could you just the ending part?
So do you feel like that kind of maybe bad blood is something that gets you up for a fight a bit more?
Oh. Yes, sadly. I mean, I'm incredibly competitive, so no matter what happens, if I'm in like a zone where I'm going to fight you, I'm fighting to win. Just because I don't lose. Like my family, that sounds really bad, but I don't mean it. Like, I'm sure one day I'll fight someone significantly better than me and lose, but like, I just don't give up is probably more accurate. Like my family has a joke because we all play wrestle and fight each other and are very just physical as a family. And we've had a joke that we would rather someone break our arm than tap out. So, which has almost happened a few times. So yeah, I definitely am already focused in, but when you have someone who is just if you're fighting someone that you don't really respect as a person, it makes it a lot easier to punch them in the face. That's really that's really all that is.
Yep, of course. That makes complete sense. And I mean, so far you've punched your opponents in the face very well, managed to get 2 wins from it. And so which one would you say out of them two you've performed your best in?
Oh, I definitely think my second fight was my better of the two. My first fight, I was so focused on only using my hands because I'm so used to kicking and grappling. So I was very like, very hesitant. And it was a lot of very poor form, I guess. Not that I'm perfect now. I like when I watch back my most recent fight, there's a lot that I want to work on. There's a lot that I want to grow in terms of the sport and things that I recognize. But worlds better than my first one. And again, I do think part of that was also because I didn't want to hurt my first opponent. Like it was my first time fighting someone that I wasn't like, that wasn't a street fight, I guess. So I didn't want to hurt her. Whereas my last opponent, I was like, I don't like you. and I knew that I had to make it like I couldn't even let it be close. So I already had that in my head. So I think that was probably part of it too.
Of course. And I mean, you see with lots of, especially professional boxers, they start off with fights which against opponents who aren't really coming to win and they're coming to lose. So I mean, on paper, theoretically, you are fighting possibly the tougher opposition to start off with than maybe a professional is.
Oh my gosh. I've never really looked at it that way. Because what you're describing to me, like I've never sought an opponent just because I thought they would be an easy win. But that's, I mean, I think that that's a really,
maybe I'm looking too
that's
deep
just really
into it.
interesting commentary. I don't even, like, that's just very interesting. I know that my last opponent was definitely going in. She wanted to kill me. She didn't. But I know she wanted to, and that was definitely its own way to be. So in a way, I guess, like I can see what you're saying. Like especially if she had been a more proficient boxer and more skilled, I could definitely see why that would have been a like significantly harder fight because her heart was definitely in it.
Yeah, no, I mean, maybe I'm looking too deep into it, you never know, but that was just a commentary perspective from my side of things, and I mean, to move on, you've got, of course, Influencer Fighting League, and you've been putting on with them big events, and what is it like working with them? What opportunities have been available outside of the ring as well as in the ring with them?
So I mean, I've really enjoyed my time this last year and a half. It's been an incredible learning opportunity. I've gotten to meet some of the most phenomenal people. And as far as opportunities outside of the ring, I mean, so first and foremost, I'm an actress. That's what I've wanted to do since probably preschool. So it is really nice to have the opportunity to showcase that I'm not just a love interest or I'm not just like the pretty face in the movie or whatever else, because I do eventually want to do my own stunts and be a little bit more into like badass roles. So I think having the opportunity to really showcase that I am so much more than just I love you to someone, you know what I mean? I think that's been phenomenal.
No, that makes complete sense. And I suppose when you do have these kind of other things going on outside of boxing, is it quite difficult to ever juggle these things at the same time?
A little bit. Funnily enough, after my first fight, the weekend after my fight, I was supposed to be filming. I did film on my first feature. And I was the lead in the feature, so the entire fight in the back of my head, I was like, oh, don't fuck up my face. Sorry, excuse my language, but like, don't mess up my face. Like, I was so nervous. But juggling, it's definitely hard, especially when like you're putting so much into training, you're putting so much into promotion and navigating and being a part of everything you have to be a part of. And then also having the energy to like my day job, also having the energy to do modeling, also have it for acting and just doing the auditions, right? It's already a tiring process. So juggling has definitely been a feat.
Yeah, I can only imagine. And I mean, of course, being an actress and a boxer, it's not really something that everybody is. But do you ever think that could be something that maybe plays onto you ever possibly going into like some WWE type thing?
That would definitely be interesting. I mean, I definitely like the world of wrestling. I trained a bit, actually, just in the wrestling world, which was very interesting. It was very fun. I don't know. If the opportunity presented itself again, it's definitely something to explore because I've explored it before and I absolutely loved it. I love the community. I love the people. So that's a maybe. I don't think it would be my first path, but who am I to argue with what the universe wants? You know what I mean?
Of course, yeah, never know. But for your kind of mental side of things as well, what would you say is your main motivation for boxing at the moment?
Like the motivation to why I do it? Oh gosh. it, I think it's one of the few things that clears my head. Because I feel like I just have like 20 channels. It's like if it's a computer screen, I have like 50 tabs open all at the same time, but they're all in different like browsers, so I never know what's going on in which one.
Yeah.
And boxing, there's a handful of things that I get like this, but boxing really focuses me. And I think it's brought a community that I've personally had a really hard time finding in Los Angeles, because I'm not from here originally.
Okay.
So it's brought this, I mean, some of the most beautiful people into my life. So I think those are probably the two biggest things that motivate me, is actually having peace.
Yeah.
And the people that I get to surround myself with.
Yeah, of course. I mean, I've spoke to a few fighters about like what fighting and especially being in the gym really is like, and like you could be like absolutely sweating like mental, but you're not feeling it because you're just like focused so much on technique and trying to make sure everything's going right in that aspect, and you can't really think about any of your other real problems.
Absolutely. And it's insane because when you start looking at the actual neuroscience behind it, because so when I was in school, that's what I was studying. I was studying behavioral neuroscience. So I get very nerdy about these things. But when we look at how the brain works when we're distracted into something else, especially if it's something physical or all encompassing, like training for boxing or MMA or just fitness in general, all of the problems start working themselves out in your subconscious. So then when you come back to them, you have all these solutions that you didn't have before, which is so freaking cool. And it's helped me navigate so much, not just pragmatically, but emotionally as well. And it's, I mean, I highly recommend it for everyone, especially for women, but for everyone.
No, that's brilliant. And I mean, we'll touch a little bit more upon just the development of women's boxing in just a moment. But for yourself, do you have a date of when you might be fighting again?
No, I have no idea yet, which is like, so I'm just trying to stay trained up and ready. But no, I sadly, I have nothing to give on that front.
Okay. So it's all good. And so, I mean, do you look at promotions like you see Misfits being the main big kind of promotion in that aspect of things at the moment? Do you look at them and see fighters like, of course, I suggest Wet fought for them, and do you ever think maybe there is that opportunity if you keep winning for the Influencer Fighting League where they're going to have to just give you a fight because of how good you're looking with each fight?
I mean, ultimately, I think my goal is to have a bidding war where all the promotions want me because I'm just so fabulous. No, but I do want to be so recognizable within the space and work hard enough to be so good that I can't be ignored. As far as like what promotion's fighting for, I'm just kind of focused on one fight at a time. I try not to, I feel like it can be a very fickle industry, so I'm just, my ultimate goal is just my personal growth and then to see where it leads me.
Of course. And I mean, in the kind of business of influencer fighting, of course, it's very much open to public opinion, and social media plays a big factor in it, and it doesn't always get the best of reps. But what and how do you kind of maybe deal with your own criticisms that people, or hate that people give to you?
Oh my gosh. Honestly, I think my biggest answer is humility, which seems to be particularly lacking in the influencer community as a whole, let alone influencer boxing. But humility, because every time I've been confronted, like I had someone that had never seen me fight. They had no idea where my skill level was at, no idea about my background, nothing. But they saw that I had my influencer fight coming up, and they were like, ha ha ha, is this a joke? Oh, LOL, whatever. Which is very, like, it's not that bad, but it's very dismissive. And like, for me, I just kind of try to recognize where people are coming from. So I was like, no, it's real, but like, I would love for you to come out and just see what it's actually about, really judge the level of the fighting instead of just your preconceptions about it.
Yeah.
And they ended up being super sweet and super open. They had a background in several different types of martial arts. And so I talked about how I had a background in it and how I like really gravitate toward grappling, and this is a whole new thing for me. And it ends up just being fine. And everyone ends up being happy. Yeah. So I think if everyone just kind of, I don't want to say for everyone, for me, taking a breath and just being like, at the end of the day, we do have a reputation as influencers and as influencer boxers. And I can see where that reputation has stemmed from. So the only thing I can do is try to be the best like boxer I can be to kind of pull in the main fans of boxing, and hopefully change our image.
Yeah, definitely. And I mean, you kind of see a lot of people call boxing just men's boxing, and you have women's boxing, and you have influencer boxing, all as different things. And I mean, I always like to see it as kind of all the same thing. It's at the end of the day, is that sport, and that's what it is. Yeah, of course. And I suppose the way that the women's boxing is going at the moment, I mean, you've seen some, I don't know if you've personally seen, but there has been some massive cards and massive fights. And do you think it's only ever really kind of going to be going in the right direction at the moment?
Absolutely. I mean, first of all, I just think women are incredible. I'm just going to start there. I think women are so cool. The fighters that we're seeing come out who happen to be women, right, are freaking phenomenal. Like, just for the sport, they're phenomenal. Like, look at look at Serrano, right? How many MMA people go into boxing and then they're trash? And then she's like, I'm actually a bad bitch at both. And I'm just like, that's so freaking cool. And we're seeing more and more women have the opportunity to showcase these skills and to learn them without being, I don't know, degraded, I suppose. I think that the amount of work that has been put in to establishing women's boxing as like a legitimate thing and not just mud wrestling or jello wrestling or cat fights has progressed us astronomically in the last like 20 years. That does worry me about the women in influencer fighting because I think not all female influencer boxers, but I think that some of the influencer boxers we see specifically in the women's circuit kind of backtrack that progress where it does come off more as catfights. And it don't get me wrong, some of the male boxers look terrible. It's not like, not all of them. Some look terrible. But we have to recognize that we have a stigma that they don't. And I think when you have things like us flashing people in the ring or us making out with each other during weigh-ins, I'm all for women doing what they want to do, but we have to represent all of us. And I do get concerned about female influencer boxing negatively affecting pro women boxing and the reputation that they have worked so hard to build.
No, I was kind of going to ask a little bit about that, not really kind of going too much in depth to it, but you do see a majority of the kind of women influencer fighters being them OnlyFans models, and of course it gets a little bit interesting sometimes in the press conferences and stuff like that. But is that, like you said, it's not going to really add to a good stigma of boxing?
It's a hard thing to balance because I'm very pro a woman can own her own body. Like, I have no judgment toward these women as individuals for doing what they need to do for their job. Like, that's fine. In my opinion, boxing and your OnlyFans job should stay separate, but that's not my decision, right? Like, that's, individuals can do what they want. What makes me kind of sad though is what I always think about are the other young women or the little girls who look up to these things, because we can't avoid that, right?
Yeah.
As women, little girls are going to look up to us. And we're having especially beautiful women, because it's influencer bossing, right? To showcase that women can be beautiful and athletic and badass and intelligent is such an important platform. And while I don't think it's inherently wrong for some of these, like, to have OnlyFans to do what you want to do with your body, it is very disheartening when you look at like all the successful women and every single one of them took off their clothes. That, again, I'm not judging individuals, but I would love if we could have more examples counter to that. Like, I know that there's a handful. Like, I know Elena, who's on Misfits, she's known for being a freaking rock star, right? Like, having that kind of diversity. Or, like, I've never done OnlyFans, not to put myself on a pedestal, but just in terms of diversity within this market, like, I've never done OnlyFans. Like, that's not my thing. I just personally am not comfortable with it. And I would love to be able to show little girls, hey, sure, yeah, that exists. We can't avoid that. But you don't have to do that. You don't have to feel pressured. You don't have to think that's your only path to get to these other levels.
And do you then think that with fighters, then maybe having that kind of different varieties that will encourage more and more, even not even just influencers, more women to fight in general?
Yes, I absolutely do. I never think there's nothing wrong with diverse representation. Like, I just can't, I can't fathom us not having a positive outcome from having as much just diverse representation of women and men, just people, right? But I see a lot more diversity in the men's league. So just, I just think it's so important, and I really do think it'll help inspire so many little girls, because it is really cool for, like, because I think of when I was a little kid and I was always more of a tomboy, and I always liked like the more guy things, right? And to be able to look up and see women that I could identify with being all the things I wanted to be. I think all of us should be striving to be able to do that for the people looking up to us.
Totally, and I suppose that leads me on to ask, is there any fighters in general in the past now that you really kind of look up to?
Serrano. Amanda Serrano. Like, that's my number one right now. Everything she does, like, she stays so classy and so humble and so just generous. It's phenomenal to me, because I remember when I first started this, everyone told me, they're like, you have to just be vicious leading up to your fight. You have to just talk so much shit. And I'm like, shit talking's fine, right? Like, trash talk leads to the sport, that's fine, whatever. But people would try to convince me, like, this last fight, my opponent got extremely personal and degrading and just what I consider unethical, right? And I was told by a lot of people to fire back. And I didn't. Outside of saying that she was lying or that I didn't think what she was doing was okay, I didn't need to lower myself to talking about the things she was talking about, her looks or her body, or implying she was a whore or whatever else, right? I didn't need to do that. And I think that Serrano is such a great example of being able to rise above that kind of clout chasing and still be a $1 million fighter, right? And still put on such a badass show.
Totally.
So that's, she's my number one.
Of course. And from the way you're kind of speaking about things, even if you do get to this top level, and I mean, fingers crossed you do, but will you forever just kind of like be yourself and just not try and force anything?
I'm not good at not just being me. I'm not good at it. Like, don't get me wrong, there's definitely, I mean, at the end of the day, I am a curated version of myself in public, right? Because we
Mm-hmm.
all are.
Mm-hmm.
I can't go around like in my private life, I curse like a sailor.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
I try not to do that
Mm-hmm.
online just because I don't,
Okay.
it's not the most polite thing. Um, but stuff like that, like little things where it's a little more curated, of
Mm-hmm.
course.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm never not going to be able to just be me. Like I'm
Mm-hmm.
never gonna, I can't fathom representing myself and not being myself.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what we're doing as influencers.
Mm-hmm.
Our brand is us.
Mm-hmm.
So if you want your brand to be you being a bully, you're saying you're a bully. Like I can't really fathom that. Plus if I started getting snobby or like up myself, you know what I mean? My parents and my siblings would fly out here just to smack me across the head. Like it just would not.
Yeah.
It just wouldn't go over well.
No, okay, that's brilliant. So, I mean, I'll leave with this final question, which I always like to ask. You've got a little bit of a platform here. Is there anything you'd like to shout out?
Um, yes. First of all, follow me.
Mm-hmm. Of course.
Nikki Hru on everything.
Mm-hmm.
Other than that, if anyone wants to collaborate, reach out to me. I'm into like a million different things. And I've shouted out a lot of my previous sponsors before.
Mm-hmm.
Buff Bear, super cool. Beyond Nature Threads, Beyond Nature Threads.
Mm-hmm.
Is super cool. Revolted Soul, Slush Ropes, Fortune Boxing Gym, and Lobos Boxing Gym. All of those people, incredible human beings.
Mm.
So I think those are my shout outs.
Amazing. Well, I mean, it's been an absolute pleasure to have you on. I knew that, I mean, I've seen other interviews of you in the past, and I just knew that this would be a good interview. That's why I was very keen to get you on. And I mean,
Yeah. I mean, anytime. You're an absolute pleasure to talk to.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And I mean, I'm sure we will end up speaking again soon. Maybe when you've got another 5 more fights. Maybe when you've got another 1 more fight down the line. We'll have to see how things go.
We'll see how busy I get.
Of course, of course. And so if you're on your round here and you haven't subscribed, please do so. Like video if you do need like video. And thanks for watching.